Hello. This is Keque's Halloween special. These stories were gathered from real people who live in or near the Amazon jungle. I hope you enjoy it. Story 1. B from Brazil. Living in a city in the middle of the Amazon jungle. Worked as a construction worker. Needed some bamboo to install some fences at the rural area of the town. Next day, really early morning. Wake up and call one of my cousins. Call him so we can go gather some bamboo. Cousin is a bit reluctant, since it's Lenten month, and he is a bit superstitious. I insist and he agrees. He gets to my house, I get my machete and off we go. As we arrive inside the jungle I feel some chills. The jungle is especially dark today, as the sky is really cloudy. We go through a dirt road inside the jungle. As the road finally ends, we continue by foot. We approach some bamboos and I start cutting them. As I'm cutting the bamboo my cousin is chopping it in smaller pieces. After getting some bamboo, we transported it to the car. We stood there, talking some minutes while we tied the bamboo. He then asked if we could go and get more, since he wanted some for one of his projects. I agreed and we started walking into the jungle again. As we were approaching another good bamboo tree, I felt some chills again. The air suddenly felt cold. And the forest went completely silent. No birds, no crickets. My cousin kept going onwards so I kept following him. He suddenly stops. Looks at me and says, "Anan, I think we should go back." "Why?" I asked. "I don't know, Anan, there is something weird, I can't hear anything." I agreed and we started to go back in the direction of the car. As we were walking I realized we were taking a long time to go back. We kept walking, paying attention to the markings so we could go back. We then realized that we were walking in circles for some time. The silence was then broken by the sound of steps on the dead leaves on the ground. We stopped and remained still. The steps were strong, as if something big was coming on our direction. We quickly hid behind a tree, in the opposite direction of the steps. Suddenly we hear something behind us. We looked, and I got paralyzed by fear. A tall woman, deep red skin, many spikes protruding from all parts of her body. She had big, all black bulgy eyes, and a very long and thick greenish and black hair with some leaves. The hair was almost like thick jungle vines. The woman made an ungodly noise, almost like she was trying to speak while droning. We immediately started to run. I suddenly felt something grabbing my ankle and pulling. I fell face first on the ground. I looked at my side, and my cousin was on the ground as well. As I turn around I feel pain on my chest. The woman was now closer to us, and had her arms wide open, almost like she was praying. Meanwhile, her hair seemed to be alive, and was whipping us, and that was the pain I just felt. I tried to stand up, but more whipping came, and I stumbled around a bit. I then felt a vine coiling around my neck, and throwing me head first on a rock. When I woke up, I could feel dried blood on my forehead. It was dark, and my cousin was nowhere to be seen. I stumbled across the jungle, trying to remember the general direction of the car. I see some lights at a distance. A searching party had come to rescue me. Apparently my cousin managed to escape from whatever that thing was, but he did break an arm in the process. He arrived town, and asked friends and family to go look for me, and even though his arm was broken, he joined the search. I had trauma, and had to do a bunch of exams. The elders of our village all told us that we encountered a Komodo Filozinha, and told us never to go back at that area again. Story 2. Be living in the rural area of the Amazon. Have a property with a few cows and chickens. Live there with my mom, dad and 3 brothers. The year was 1997. As we lived near the jungle, We needed some kind of protection to our cows and especially our chickens. That's why we had dogs. We had 5 big fila brasileiros or Brazilian Mastiffs. They are huge dogs, weighing around 110 pounds and are highly aggressive. These are known for scaring off even large jaguars. Having 5 of them around the property kept us calm at night. One night, me and my brothers were in our room. We were all small, so we lived in a single big room, all 4 of us. We were already ready to sleep, as we were all laying on our beds trying to sleep. Mom and Dad were also in their rooms. Suddenly all 5 of the dogs start barking. We hear a loud noise, as if something large bumped into one of the fences. Me and my brothers stand up, and go to the living room. As we arrive there, Dad is standing in front of the main door of the house, holding a hunting rifle. Mom is right by his side. "Stay away, kids," says my dad. One of my brothers goes for the window, my mom quickly steps in front of him. She tells us not to worry and to go back to our rooms. The dogs are barking more aggressively now. Dad looks through the window and goes pale. Dogs start falling back to the direction of the main door. Some of the dogs stop barking and start scratching the door while whining. We started getting scared. We never seen the dogs doing that. Suddenly a musky smell fills the air, as if there was something rotten outside. Suddenly we start hearing some commotion in the chicken pen. As the pen was near the other side of the house, one of my brothers went running to one of the windows. He opened the wooden window just a bit, before Dad pulled him from the window, really angry. As he fell to the ground, he didn't cry. He stood there, completely pale. After some time the noise stopped. Even the dogs calmed down. That night, one of our dogs was slashed almost in half and died. Almost all of our chickens also died that night, and there was no blood in the chickens, nor any big wound. It's almost like they were drained from all their blood. My brother refused to talk about what he had seen for over 8 years. One day, as we were all talking, he finally told us what he's seen. That night, as it was raining, he saw just a glimpse of the thing as a lightning illuminated the sky. He said he saw a brownish creature, crawling on all 4s. It had brownish and yellow skin, and was vaguely humanoid. He had a big head, and had many horns, on its face, and on its back. And the most scary thing for him, were the eyes. Big, red, glowing, bulgy eyes, so bright he could see them in the dark. To this day, we all agree it was a chupacabra. Story 3. Be living in the Amazon. A company removed some trees, so it could build some wooden shacks. These shacks were to house workers, who would gather the wood around. I was one of these workers. We were in native land, and the whole operation was very likely to be illegal. I needed the money, so I asked no questions. One of my best friends also went with me. We went there in a run-down bus, through some makeshift roads. The day that we arrived there, one of the owners was showing us around the camp. He finally showed us the shack we were to stay in. The camp was brand new, so new in fact that it had about 5 people there in total. The shack was also new. A small bathroom, a makeshift kitchen and a bunk bed. The next day we woke up early, and went to the communal house. As I mentioned, there were only 5 people total in the camp, not including the owner. There, the owner gave us breakfast and sent us in our first recon trip. We were to look around the forest, identifying and counting the trees. The 5 of us went around the jungle, writing down some papers, and marking some of the trees. One of the other guys called us with a scream. This particular dude was a direct descendant of the natives. We go towards the man, who is pointing to a tree. On the tree, markings in red and white are made, with some feathers attached to it. What is that? Anon. This is native territory. But the owner said there was nobody living around here. Maybe not now Anon, but at some time, someone lived here. We spent the rest of the evening doing the recon. We actually found stuff like old arrows into tree trunks, and more paintings. A few meters ahead of where we were, we spotted a water stream. As we were walking to it, more and more paintings would appear. More feathers, and more colors. As we arrived at the stream, all of the trees around it were marked. The water was almost clear, and we could see it was a very deep stream, as we could see the bottom. "Should we swim a bit?" asked one of the dudes. "No, these waters are cursed," said the native dude. Some of us laughed. We didn't swim in the stream, but we marked it on the map. We arrived at camp as dusk was falling. We had dinner and went to sleep. Wake up in the middle of the night. Hear something crawling outside. Stand up and lit the lamps in the cabin. Started trying to look outside. My friend wakes up. "Anan, what is it?" I heard something crawling around. I thought it might be a boa. He then opens the door. We bring the lamp outside and have a look around. We don't see anything at all. "Anan, look." My friend is actually pointing at the tree line. Way in the back, a small glow can be seen, glowing and dimming a yellow light. Is it fire? I don't know, Anan. Maybe someone is there? We stood there watching the glow, wondering if we should alert the camp. Then it faded away for good. We finally went back to sleep after some time. At morning, as we were having breakfast, we mentioned what we had seen at night to the other guys. The native dude looked at us wide-eyed. Then we started another day of recon. We went to another direction that time, but the whole way, the native dude kept asking if we could take a look at the river. We finally gave in after lunch, and went to the river. As we were getting closer, I could swear I could see the same glow coming from the river. "You guys can see it too?" asked my friend. As we got closer, a clear glow could be seen from the water, illuminating the shadows of the trees. Once we got very close, it stopped. "What the hell?" I asked. "Oh God, it's a tata. We need to get out." The native dude said. "What?" "Anan, we need to go home, we can't stay here." "What are you on about?" He then told us a story about an entity that lives inside rivers. It is sometimes a demon, and sometimes a god. It had many forms, but in all stories, it was very territorial. The mood actually got tense after that. We finished our job and went back to camp. As scared as we were, all of us needed the money, so we couldn't leave. That very same night, I woke up and smell smoke coming from outside. Hear the noise of fire crackling near us, and again the same crawling noise. Wake up my friends screaming. Grab everything I can, and run outside. We need to get to the bus. My friend screams, as we run from the cabin, now visibly on fire. The whole camp is on fire. My friend disappears into the smoke. I start running in the general direction of the bus. Suddenly I'm surrounded by flames. The heat is unbearable. I then hear a whispering sound in front of me, like a snake or lizard. Right in front of me, a figure standed. A gigantic snake, that could easily eat me whole if it wanted to. It had big yellow eyes and red scales, and had part of its body lifted. I fell on my knees, I could feel my skin burning. The thing stayed there, looking at me with these yellow eyes. I felt a strong wind around me. The snake vanished, part of the flames subsided in one of my sides. I could see the bus on the other side. I stood up and ran as fast as I could. I got to the bus, and got second and third degree burns. The whole camp was burned down, along with a large part of the forest. One of the guys actually disappeared. Me and my friend made it. The native guy tells me to this day, that I live in the mercy of the boy Tata. And to this day, I agree. Story 4. This story is actually from another region of Brazil. Be me, living with my mom and dad. My dad is in the military, so we move a lot. moved to a house in a city called Barbacena. The house is big, a little bit too big in fact for only 3 people. My room was especially big. I had 16 at the time and having a large room was really cool. My dad was a very cool dude, but my mom had some mental issues. She used to smoke and drink a lot. When she was drunk, she became another person. Her voice changed, and she became very violent. By this time she was about 8 years clean, so I had only faint memories about it. It wasn't long for me to understand that there was something wrong with that house. The first experience I had in that house was about 3 months I was living in there. One night, my mom and dad were out for dinner, and I stayed home playing StarCraft online with my friends. Between 2 games, I went downstairs to get some water. When I'm passing through my parents' room, I see the door opened. The darkness inside the room didn't let me see anything. My dad used to listen to radio every day, and he really liked a gospel radio station, to which he and my mom would sleep to it every night. The radio was on. I could also hear a very hoarse voice singing along every word, almost laughing at it. I just bolted into my room, and locked myself in, until my parents arrived. I tried telling them what happened, but they just ignored me. From this day forward, I started hearing more and more stuff at night. Steps were a common thing now. My mom started to drink again. Her angry outbursts started to get more frequent, to the point that my dad actually had to send her to rehab. After she went to rehab, although she was away, I could hear her singing sometimes when I was alone. I could smell her perfume. One night, as I was sleeping, I was having an awful nightmare. I can't recall exactly what it was, but it was really bad. I woke up in the middle of the night. Immediately I felt I was paralyzed. I only managed to open my eyes, as the light coming from the street was illuminating me from the window. At the side of my bed, I could see a creature, looking like a pale blue horse, with big white eyes, and it was staring at me. I wanted to scream so badly, that I started to cry. The thing slowly moved away and went through the wall. As soon as it disappeared, I could move again, and I screamed as loud as I could. My dad bursted in through the door. After that incident, I had to sleep in my dad's bedroom for a while. I told one of my new friends what had happened. Well, Anon, that's to be expected from that house. He then told me about the dark past from the city. Apparently an insane asylum killed over 16,000 people there, many of which weren't even insane. The thing was so bad it is called the Brazilian Holocaust. The house we were was the house of one of the doctors that used to work there. I went home, so I could tell Dad about it. When I got home, my mom and Dad were there. Mom apparently got to visit us that night. I couldn't tell them what I heard, because I didn't wanted my mom to hear it. My dad bought a cake and we celebrated. At night, however, I woke up to some noise downstairs. I stood up and opened my door, thinking it might be my dad. As I looked downstairs, I see my mom standing still with her head down. Mom? Her head then lifts in an unnatural movement. She growls. I scream. I run towards my dad's room, as he is now standing up inside the room. He passes through me, and tackles my mom, who is running behind me with a knife. They struggle on the ground, as my dad tries to subdue her. She kept screaming in a guttural voice. I called the police, and my dad actually handcuffed her. She was taken by the cops to a mental hospital. My dad stayed with me at the living room for the night. Near 4 a.m. I had to go to the kitchen to get some water. My dad was awake, so I didn't bother to turn on the lights. One of the kitchen windows was straight to the driveway. As I got in the kitchen, I got chills down my spine. When I looked to the driveway, I froze. A very tall dark figure was staring at the kitchen. Even though it didn't have a face, I knew it was staring at me. My dad got into the kitchen, and looked at what I was staring. He grabbed me by the hand, turned on all the lights of the house. We packed our bags with the essentials and left to a hotel. After that, I finally told him the story of the house. He then confessed that he was having the same experiences, but didn't want to scare me off. We moved out a few days later, but neither of us stepped foot on that house again. My mom then passed away at the hospital a few weeks later. I think that her alcohol addiction left her open to whatever there was in that house. Story 5. The story happened around 2005. Me, Brazilian, 22 years old. Living in the rural area of a city in the middle of the Amazon. I live with my parents, my grandmother, and my older brother. We lived in a medium-sized house, and had a small farm with cattle and chickens around. Although the farm itself was small, it was surrounded by jungle. At the time, I had two really good friends. Raphael, who was a good hunter and fisherman from the region, and Michelle, who was serving the military at the time. They came by sometimes, so we could talk and hunt together. One day, we all were talking at the living room, including my brother. My grandmother was there too, sitting at a rocking chair. We were talking about strange things at the forest, like symbols and stuff. We had never seen anything paranormal, or anything like that. My grandmother then started talking. She told us that where she used to live, she had a cabin inside the jungle, where my grandfather used to stay for hunting. We took interest in the story, and she kept telling us about it. Apparently, he built the cabin for hunting, but he almost never did, because the land was hunted. We asked what she meant by it. She told us that according to my grandfather, strange things would happen. Like rocks would be thrown at the cabin, or strange noises. She said that the only thing that made the things calm down was asking for the spirits for permission before entering. I granted that she was telling the truth, since she doesn't lie. My friends didn't take it seriously. Some months later, my brother comes home with Raphael after some hunting. They don't bring anything back from the hunt. My brother has an idea for a better hunt. He suggests we all go to my grandmother's old property, so we can find the cabin. We had never been to our grandmother's land. Foolishly, I agree. They get in touch with Michelle, who also agrees. We talk to our grandmother, who lends us the key to her house, but warned us that if we go to the cabin, to ask for permission to the spirits to hunt. The next day, we wake up early and get to the car. We get Michelle and Raphael, and head to my grandmother's land. We find her house, and leave the car. The jungle had claimed the good part of the land back. We left the car near the house and continued by foot. After some time walking, we finally see a small cabin. As soon as I saw the cabin, I stopped and made a small prayer. My friends saw this, and they laughed. Anon, you know our grandmother says this kind of stuff to scare us, right? My brother said. I ignored him, and we kept walking. The cabin was small, had only a bedroom, a small kitchen and a bathroom. It was old, and part of the wood was black and rotten. We unloaded our backpacks, and prepared our sleeping bags. We had something to eat, and as it was getting dark, we went to sleep. The next day, we woke up early, ate something, and went hunting. We all had crossbows, only Michelle had a revolver. We got in the jungle at 8 a.m. We started by following some animal trails. After some time we start hearing some movement on the trees. We all go quiet. We started hearing heavy steps. Whatever it was big. We took cover behind a tree. A strong smell of rotten flesh filled the air. I had to hold my breath so I wouldn't vomit. We stood still for some time, then the noises started to disappear. Should we look for that thing? Michelle asked. I don't know, maybe if we get some traps that I left on the cabin, said Raphael. We all agreed, and headed back for the cabin. As we arrived at the cabin, we looked at the clock. Even though we could swear we only were at the jungle for 2 hours at max, it was 4 p.m. What the hell, how did we spend all the time there? When I said that, everyone got a bit tense. That was weird, said my brother. We decided to call it a day, since it was already late for going out. In the middle of the night, I woke up. I heard noise outside, some leaves and branches shaking. The noise quickly turned into the same sound of steps we heard before. The steps were coming closer to the cabin. I was very scared at that point, so I kept my eyes closed. The steps got to the side of the cabin, and whatever it was, started making the cabin shake. It was not a violent shake, but you could hear the wood squeaking as it shook. What the hell? My brother jumped up. Everyone woke up. The noise suddenly stopped. We turned on our flashlights, and started trying to rationalize what happened. I was awake, I heard steps and the cabin started shaking. Well, Anon, are you sure you weren't sleeping? Asked Michelle. I felt it shaking too, said my brother. Well, it is an old cabin. That might be normal? Michelle asked. We ended up accepting that I was dreaming, and the cabin was old. The next day, we went out for hunting, this time taking some big homemade traps. We were all walking inside the jungle, following some animal trails. After some time, we realized that my brother is missing. We stopped the hunt and started calling for him. We kept searching until dusk. As night was falling, we decided to head back for the cabin, for maybe he was there. As we approached the cabin, we see a big shadow near it. When we get a bit closer, we see a huge creature, around 2.5 meters tall, big claws, very hairy and walking on 2 legs. It looked like it had a big gaping hole on its torso, and a small head. The smell of rotten flesh was very strong. We immediately hid behind a nearby tree. The thing made a deep noise, and started coming on our direction. Michelle stood up, and shot the thing. The creature made a loud deep roar, and started running on our direction. Me and Michelle managed to run, but the thing managed to hit Raphael with one of its big claws, throwing him near a tree. The thing kept running into the woods. We got to Raphael, who was in shock, and bleeding from a deep scratch on his shoulder. We grabbed him and got inside the cabin. We barricaded the door with some old furniture, and stopped the bleeding on Raphael. We had to wait the whole night inside the cabin, all the time listening to roars and steps near it. As soon as we seen the light of the day, we got out and ran towards my grandmother's house. We had to carry Raphael all the way, since he wasn't feeling well to run. There, we got in the car and headed home. My brother was found a day later, alive but very hurt. He said he seen some movement and went to check, and the thing chased and hurted him. He managed to escape by jumping into a river. He then followed the river to the nearest town. Our grandmother then said that what we had seen was a mapinguari. She then scolded us for not asking permission to get in, but was thankful that it didn't kill us. Story 6. Bime. Brazilian, 32 years old. Living in a city near the Amazon River. At the time, I was working as an independent fisherman. I was trying to find a new fishing spot, as the place I was using for fishing was crowded. So I spent some days looking for a new spot, using my canoe and a row. After some days of searching, I got inside a nice stream of the river, and I started to row upstream. After some time, I stopped and started fishing. I waited for some time, but fished nothing. So I kept going upstream. As I was getting more and more upstream, I began to feel weird, as if something was watching me. I brushed it off, and kept going. After some time, it was almost dusk. At the sides of the river, I saw big alligators, so I slowed down. I had a gun with me, a big .38 Garucha. But I wouldn't kill the alligators without a good cause. I noticed my back was filled with them, so I couldn't go back. So I went forward, trying to find a spot to stop, and set camp on the top of a tree with my tent. A bit ahead, after I didn't see more alligators, I stopped and set my tent on 2 trees. In the middle of the night I woke up. As my tent was some meters away from the river, I could listen if something would happen to my boat. I started hearing noises on the river, as if the alligators were fighting with something. Everything was dark, so I couldn't see anything. I started hearing slow steps coming in the direction of the tent. I was calm, because the tent was on about 6 meters from the ground, so alligators wouldn't get to me. Suddenly I started hearing gurgling sounds from under me. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it on. Under me, there was this thing. A creature of about 1.5 meter, big yellow reptilian eyes, a big fish-like head, with sharp teeth. It was a dark brown, and had small sharp claws and what looked like to be gills at the side of its neck. It was staring directly at me, making a gurgling noise. I turned my flashlight off and started praying, as I began loading my gun. The thing began hitting the tree, making it shake. This noise stopped, and a noise of dragging through wood began. I realized it was climbing the tree. I shined my flashlight to the tree, and it was midway up already. I tried shooting it, but my old gun failed. I jumped to the tree that I knew the thing wasn't climbing, and I got to the ground. With only my flashlight and my gun, I ran to the boat, almost falling in the darkness. I got in the boat. I started to row downstream desperately. Suddenly, I felt something grabbing my row underwater. I tried shaking it violently, and it released the row. I then heard something jumping from the water to the boat. The thing was now on my back. I screamed, turned around, and tried shooting it again. This time, the old gun shot with a very loud bang. The thing screamed and gurgled, falling into the water. I then keep rowing, now with more adrenaline. I keep rowing until I found a small village near the river. I asked for help there, and the locals took me in. They said I found the caboclo dogwa, a creature that hunts the fishermen around that region. I never went back to that side of the river. Story 7. Me. Brazilian, 28, working in the military. Got transferred to a city in the Amazon. I had an infant son, about 2 years old at the time. My wife died when she gave birth to him. As I needed to work, my mom agreed to stay with me, until I got a person to take care of my son while I was at work. As I was going to have to live there for quite a while, I rented a house. The house was big, had 2 floors, the walls were all decorated with gray stones. Houses like that are not uncommon on the region, since most materials don't resist the constant heat and rain. There were 3 rooms upstairs, each one with a bathroom. Downstairs, there was the living room, the kitchen, and a dinner room. From the kitchen, there was a window and a door leading to a fenced backyard. The grass was high in the backyard, but there was a busted concrete path leading to an old big dog house made of white wood. As we arrived, my son got very irritated. For me that was normal, since the trip there was very long. I had some people clean the house before we arrived, so all we needed to do was pay some people to carry all the furniture inside. Once the beds were in place, we were so tired that we decided to sleep, and leave the whole unboxing stuff for the other day. I slept in a room alone, and my mother slept with my son in another room. We decided to do it this way because I would have to get up early the next morning. The night went by with no incidents. The next day, I went to work early. I came home from work at 5 p.m. Dinner was done, and some stuff from the boxes were already in place. As I got upstairs, I could hear my son trying to talk. I got to his room, but my mom was asleep on her bed. My son was sitting on his bed, with his face covered. I brushed it off, and wake up my mom. We all get downstairs for dinner. As we were eating, my son started trying to talk. Head. Bad. He. Bad. I freaked out a bit. As he said that, I asked my mother if he had seen anyone today. She said that nobody went there, as she was unboxing stuff the whole day. I said okay, and went upstairs after eating. My mom stayed downstairs at the kitchen with my son. As I was watching TV in my room, I heard my mom screaming downstairs. I grabbed my gun and ran to her. As I got there, she was looking at the window, very scared. My son was crying. What the hell? Anon, I think I have seen something on the window. What was it? I don't know, I have only seen a shadow outside. I light up the outside floodlight and go outside with my gun. I see the doghouse moving. Point my gun at it, and move slowly. As I get to it, I shine a flashlight inside. Nothing. I walk around the doghouse. Nothing. I get back. Mom, it was probably an animal. Okay, Anon. I walk to the living room. As soon as I get to it, I look at the window. I see a glimpse of a hand at the window. The hand was big, had very thin fingers, ending on sharp, big nails. It had pale skin, and had various wounds on it. I was startled for a second, then it disappeared. I turned the front light on, and looked outside with my gun. Nothing. I felt weird as I was outside. As if something was watching me. I then got inside. I did not tell my mom what I'd just seen, as she was scared enough. I ended up rationalizing the whole thing as an animal around the house. We were almost in the jungle, that would be a normal occurrence. We ended up sleeping in the same room that night. The next day I went to work. As I was at work, I asked around about animals. One of my co-workers told me that, although animals are quite normal around, nothing matched the height of the shadow, nor the description of the hand. Sometime later, after lunch, one of my co-workers tells me to get the phone, as my mom was calling. I took the phone. My mom was crying, very agitated. She was crying so much, that she couldn't tell me what happened. I explained that to my superior, and went home in a hurry. As I arrived, it was around 2 p.m. My mom was upstairs. She had barricaded her room with a bed, and was inside with my son. As she noticed me, she opened the door. She and my son were crying, then it took a while until they calmed down. Later, she started telling me the story. She said that my son was sleeping upstairs, and she was at the kitchen cooking. As she was distracted, she heard something whispering her name. She ignored it, but I continued, now with a deeper voice. When she looked at the kitchen window, she saw a thing. She described it as being something like a person. It had a giant face, like a child's face, large big red eyes. It had two sharp small horns, had a pale skin with various wounds, and a mouth smiling with sharp teeth. As she looked at it, the thing called her name again, and started walking in the direction of the kitchen door. She screamed, and ran to the second floor, locking herself in my son's room. She says that she had been hearing noises at night, coming especially from the backyard. She then asked me if we could go away from that house. I tried calming her down, but she really wanted to leave. I ended up agreeing to leave, but we would do it in the day after, as it was already 4 p.m. My mom thanked me, and I went to my room for gathering some stuff. As I was there, I ended up laying on my bed and falling asleep. Sometime later, already at night, I woke up. Even before opening my eyes, I heard a strong sound, like a heartbeat. As I opened my eyes, the floodlight outside was lighting up my room. At the wall beside my bed, I saw a big black vine. Or so I thought. Upon better inspection, it was something like a big vein running on the wall. Other smaller and big veins were there too. I started following the veins with my eyes, and they concentrated at the wall on the front of my bed. As I looked, The veins were concentrated on that thing. On the wall, a big round face was protruding. A face with big red eyes, and two small horns on his head. It was looking at me and smiling, with small needle-like teeth. "Anon," it said, with a deep voice. I screamed and ran away from my room, locking the door behind me. I ended up getting all my family that very same night, and went to a hotel. I never came back to that house. Whatever that thing was, I think it had something to do with the old doghouse.